Today I'm going to talk about my best and worst reads of 2018. Hi, welcome back to my channel, Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura, and today I am talking about my favorite and least favorite reads of 2018. So in 2018, I read about 480 so books. Of that, 50 were comic books and graphic novels that were not manga, and about 11 were prose, which includes nonfiction. And then I'm only taking into consideration ones that I read for the first time in 2018. So of that 460 or so, half of those, 440? Yeah. Of the remaining, of the manga that I read almost an equal split of new to me titles as well as rereads, so I'm only taking into consideration the new to me titles, and then going further than that, I'm only taking into consideration if I read volume 1 for the first time last year or the final volume for the first time last year, so if I began or ended that series. So that's sort of what I'm judging on. I looked at my Goodreads and checked out my star ratings and picked out what my favorites were, and if you are following me on Goodreads, I don't think anyone's following me all that closely, but if you are, you may notice that a lot of my 4-star reads were actually more favorite than my 5-star reads. I'm leaving a lot of 5-star reads off of this list. I still think that they are very high quality. I really enjoyed reading them, but they're not my favorites, and that's not how I rate books. I don't give star ratings solely based on my enjoyment. That's only one of 5 categories that I use to determine whether a title is worth reading. 4-star reads are very, very good titles. It just happens to be that a lot of the ones, even though I see that there's some flaw in them, they were still more of a favorite read than some of the other titles. So just sort of putting that out there. If you are curious about how I rate manga, I do have an old video that I can link up below if you are curious. At any rate, I am just going to go through this list. It is in order of how much I liked it, and I am going to start with my least favorite reads of 2018. So in 2018, I actually rated about 11 or 12 books 1 star, and these are officially my worst, my worst of the 1 stars. The first one is Genshiken Return of the Otaku by Ida Kazutoshi and created by Kiyoshimoku. This is the light novel that was spun off from the Genshiken manga series. I love Genshiken. It is one of my absolute favorite manga series. This was absolute rubbish. It was so garbage. It takes complete liberties with characters. It completely redefines how they would react in a situation. It adds a fantasy element which never was present in the series, and the writing is just trash. It's one of the worst things I've probably ever read in prose. The next thing that probably is the worst nonfiction thing I've ever read, and I would urge you not to read this book. That's how bad it is. Unfortunately, on the back it says, "Dear Otaku, this is your manga Bible. Do not trust this Bible. It is telling you lies. It is out of date, unfactual, badly written. The few places where it actually tells facts, most of the time it actually just glosses over with these generic statements that are unresearched. It is claiming to be in English, French, and German, but doesn't translate everything. It doesn't provide equal information for all artists. I can't say anything good about this book except for that there are some pretty glossy pages. The only reason for you to buy this is if you are into crafts and you are looking for some glossy pages to use in some sort of Mod Podge project. That's the only value that this has. $10 for a lot of glossy pages is worth your money, but do not read the text. It will make you dumber. And then the last 2 are my manga style books. The first one is my OEL. I am not a fan of OEL, so I judge it fairly harshly. This one is Red String by Gina Biggs. I was given it by a friend who was cleaning out their collection, and it was just really bad. It's not even remotely close to that last title of how bad it is. This one is just lightly bad. It was my worst OEL that I read in the year. It's just that the art is not very consistent and the pacing is incredibly unrealistic, unbelievable. It's hard for you to follow a story where the character doesn't want to be in love, falls in love, and then is like beating themselves against the ground that they don't want to be separated from this person within 3 panels. Like, it is just a ridiculous lightning speed paced story, which does not work. And pretty much the same complaint that I have for this, but I needed to include at least one manga, and that would be Gatekeepers by Keiji Goto. I think this also just suffers from serious whiplashes so fast. Basically, a boy, he's going to appear at school. Before he even gets to school, he's told that he has this magic gatekeeping power, and he's the leader of the group of girls. So now, even though he has no idea, he's totally dumb, he gets to lead around a bunch of girls. It doesn't make sense. I don't like the concept or the premise, and I hated how fast-paced this was. How all of these concepts happen so quickly to establish a scenario. It did not work for me. So those were my worst reads of the year. There were certainly more 1-star reads, and there's certainly other titles that I didn't like, but I read a lot of titles, so there's bound to be some drags in the mix. But going forward, I also have a lot of titles that I really loved, and I actually think I had a really good reading year. There's lots of really interesting titles, a good mix of titles. I had fun reading manga. I always have fun reading manga, but it's great when you can find some favorite titles. So this is what I enjoyed the most this year, and I don't actually even know how many titles I've got here. I just really picked the titles that were my favorite and put them in a pile. So I didn't eliminate titles to make them fit into this list either. These are just my favorites. My first favorite read was actually my only new favorite read, my only new title this year. This is Mob Psycho 100 by One. I really loved reading this. I had so much fun reading it. It's basically about kind of 2 students. One of them is pretending to be a exorcist and is charging people to exorcise whatever situations, places that they need exorcised, and he has an assistant who actually is a very powerful exorcist, who he gets to do this work for him. This is the boy mob, and it's really, he's sort of like kind of emotionless, but also he just wants to be like friendly and helpful, and just gets into these quirky little situations. He just sort of follows along, and it's just really, he's just really sweet and nice. But he has sort of locks on his emotion, and when the locks kind of break, then all hell is let loose. And I just really liked the build-up. I liked the actual seeing the number build-up of his mental state kind of unraveling. I thought it was really fantastic. So funny. I thought the characters were great. And I know people will criticize the art, but I actually think the art is incredibly effective for this type of story. And I am really looking forward to reading more of this. This is going to be a really fun read for me. So yeah, this was one of my favorites for 2018. My next favorite is Master Keaton. This is by Naoki Urasawa, Hokusei Katsushika, and Takashi Nagasaki. This is a series of short scenarios, basically about Master Keaton, who is kind of like the MacGyver of Japan, I guess. He has a military background. He's an archaeologist, so he knows a lot about ancient technology. He is a part-time professor, and he's working as an insurance sort of broker or salesman, something like that. Insurance investigator. So situations happen where, you know, something that's been insured by this company goes missing and he has to go and investigate. He gets wrapped up in a situation where he has to use his past military experience as well as his knowledge in archaeology in order to solve the problem, in order to survive a situation, in order to defeat some bad guy. The situations are quite short, so you definitely don't get a lot of story, but the main character, Master Keaton, does build over the volumes. and you get to know a little bit more about him. And he's actually a really interesting character, although a little pathetic, even though he's pretty cool. I really, really like this title. I like the way that it's told. I like the scenarios. I love the archaeology. You know, I love the history background. But it's just so much fun, and I really, really like the character of Master Keaton, so I'm looking forward to reading more in the future. I've only just begun reading the series. My next favorite is Queen Emeraldess by Leiji Matsumoto, a 2-volume series I've been meaning to read forever and finally got to finish reading it. I really enjoyed reading this. I thought it was wonderful. Actually, it's still kind of a new title, so just not released this year, I don't think. Basically the story about Emeraldess, who is a space pirate. She flies around in her ship, the Queen Emeraldess, and she runs into a boy named Hiroshi Umino who escapes from Earth in his spaceship of his own making, and in his attempt to become a pirate, in his attempt to kind of fly the skies, she reflects on her own experience as a pirate and her own experience living her life. It's quite poetic and epic, and some of the art in it is just very cinematic. Let's see. A lot of the artwork just kind of these little overlays. They aren't necessarily panel work, it's more like introspective thoughts on things. A lot of these big black pages. And just really nice artwork. The publication is also really beautiful. I really enjoyed reading this. I thought it was definitely more of a slow read. It definitely doesn't have the pace of a high adventure, but I just really liked Emeraldess's personality. She's very cool, and I really liked being inside her head, and I think this is just a really good work, and you should check it out. The next title that I really enjoyed, I read this back in January, so I don't remember it perfectly, but I know I really enjoyed it. Stolus by Maki Kusamoto. It's just a short little one-shot that was published by Tokyopop, and it is one of the most beautifully published manga. It's actually in these interesting color tones. Really, really beautiful. Hopefully I'm not showing you anything too disturbing. It is basically the story of a man who becomes obsessed. I think she's sort of a model. And they both have just very destructive, passionate relationship. It just sort of disrupts both of their lives. They kind of go down in flames. It's a very toxic relationship. I think that's sort of the least that it is. It's very, very toxic, and it goes up in flames. It is just really beautiful to read. It is very kind of bizarre. It's really beautiful to look at. I just really enjoyed reading this, and I definitely want to read it again because now I'm forgetting a lot of what it was about it that I loved, and I know that I really enjoyed the story as well, but I'm losing bits and pieces of that, so I definitely want to read this one again. The next favorite title is A Zoo in Winter. This is by Jiro Taniguchi. Now, Jiro Taniguchi's Walking Man was my favorite read of last year, so it's not surprising that he would be a favorite again this year. This is, I think, semi-autobiographical about a young man becoming a mangaka. It is sort of his start from kind of working in, I think, textile plant, if I recall, or textile industry as a salesperson even. Then getting a job as an assistant to a mangaka, and then moving on and becoming a full-on mangaka in his own right. So it's sort of the tracing that process, his thought process, the history behind it, the reason behind it, and it really explains, and I think this is sort of like the key thing it explains, is his attention to detail, his attention to nature, and sort of just the way that he constructs stories. There's a lot of that sort of implied in this work, and I thought it was really great for that. So I found it really fascinating to read, and it just felt like it really explains Jiro Taniguchi in a new way that I hadn't thought of reading his other works before. So I really, really enjoyed this work. My next favorite is The Book of Human Insects by Osamu Tezuka. It was the anniversary, or the 90th anniversary of his birth last year, and so I did read a handful of Tezuka titles last year. This was my favorite that I read of his. It is a sort of a psychological thriller. It really has the feel of the 1970s to it. It's just really fun, and it's got some really great characters, and or maybe not such great characters. There isn't really anyone in this story that's good. This really kind of revolves around one particular character who just sort of captures the imagination of men and is able to absorb their genius or reflect the genius of the people around her, and so ends up sort of taking the position of certain people. She can kind of form herself into the life, metamorphose into the life of the people that she is closest with, and so she becomes close with people, takes over, and then gets the thing that she wants. It's really fun and exciting, and you're not really sure where it's going to go, and it doesn't have that like happily ever after result, which I always really like in comics. So I just really had fun reading this, and if you are maybe not into so much of Tezuka's sort of kids works like Astro Boy, this is a really fun entry into his more adult titles. So my next title is not so much about the title, it's more about the experience, and that is Erika Sakurazawa. This particular one is called Nothing But Loving You, but my sister and I were able to see her because she came to our city last year, and I got this particular book signed, so that was just sort of a nice experience. Because she was coming, I did read through all of her titles, and we have all of the ones that are available in English in our collection. This one was pretty good. Angel is actually my favorite. It's a story, or a series of short stories, basically, of relationships. All of her works are about relationships, kind of exploring women's feelings in relationships. But that one in particular is about a young man who has an angel living with him, and she doesn't really do anything. She doesn't really talk to him. I don't think she ever says anything, but she kind of helps him out, and then continues to live with him, but then, you know, he'll see her, or she'll leave for a month and be helping someone else and then come back. So that one is just really interesting and unique, and I really like that story. This one was quite good too, and this one is more about kind of, it's actually a love triangle type story where she's trying to decide between two young men and whether or not she's in love with him or they're in love with her. But just the way that Erika Sakurazawa writes works, they feel very real, they feel natural, they're very readable, and I'm surprised how much I really did enjoy them because I hadn't actually read them before. Or I'd flipped through some of them before, but I ended up actually reading her entire collection this year, and they were really good, and I'm looking forward to reading them again. So I would definitely recommend Erika Sakurazawa. If you ever see her works, you can pick them up. They're all single volumes, all self-contained. The only one that's different is Angel's Nest. Even that one you can read on its own, but it is sort of a continuation of the story Angel. So but everything else you can pick up, they're single volumes, so if you ever see them secondhand, you don't have to worry about collecting all series, and they're worth collecting. My next favorite title is Complex Age. This is by Yui Sakuma. I didn't start reading this last year, but I did finish reading it, and it is just such a delightful read. I wasn't sure about it at the beginning because it is a seinen title about young women's experience as otaku. These are particularly about cosplayers, and there were some aspects to that first volume that really felt like a little bit male-gazy, a little bit, you know, just very slightly unnerving. But moving forward from that volume, I just feel like it really is captured what a woman's experience in fandom is, particularly as a woman ages and sort of realizes that they are interested in something that is generally considered to be childish, that they are older than everybody else who's in that fandom, that are enjoying something that maybe is considered abnormal to the rest of society, and what do you do with that? You know, do you give that up eventually? Do you decide that that's not for you anymore? Or do you find some way to actually include it in your life and just be okay with yourself? That's what this story is about, and it's I would encourage any woman, particularly if you are more grown up or you're growing up, to check this title out. It is fantastic. This title is probably going to be very unusual, but this is Project X Cup Noodle. This is by Tadashi Kato. This is the third volume of 3 that were published in English of the Project X series. These are all histories of innovation in Japan, and this is in particular about the cup noodle. It is all about the cup noodle brand corporation, how they decided what to make, how they designed, you know, down to the styrofoam cup, how they got the noodles to be crunchy, how everything kind of worked, how they ended up eventually selling it to the people, and how it eventually caught on. And it's just a history of cup noodle, but it's so wonderful to read, and it is so satisfying to see the result and how happy everyone is. I really, really loved reading this. And my last read of the year is a little bit more serious, so we can all appreciate that. That is Ohikoshi. This is by Hiroaki Samura. This is, again, a couple of stories, and they're basically, the first one starts out with a group of characters, all like kind of college friends, and kind of navigating relationships within this group. But what's really great about this is that there are so much fourth wall breaking, there's so much comedy and humor in this. It really feels like Hiroaki Samura is letting you into the front seat, like giving you the inside scoop, bringing you into his family. Like, you just feel so part of the work, because there's so much fun and humor in this story. I loved it so much. Every time something silly came up, I loved that bit so much. I would have loved this story anyway, because the story, the relationship, this is the kind of drama relationship stories that I like to read. But with that extra humor, it just worked so well for me. The second kind of main story is about a mangaka and her relationship with her editor, and her editor is sort of sexually harassing her. Her life kind of goes down the toilet, and then she does something with her life and comes back to manga, and it's really fun. It's not necessarily very believable, but it's incredibly fun to read, and I loved it. I loved the result of it, and yeah, it was just such a fun read, and it makes me so excited to read more Samura works in 2019, and I definitely will be picking them up. So those are my favorite reads from 2018, and a few least favorite reads. What were your favorites? I would definitely love to know down below, and certainly if I haven't picked them up, I would love to check them out. So please let me know what your favorite reads were of last year. If you've made a video or a blog post or something of the same, I would also love to know that. So put a link down below and I'll definitely go and check it out. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.